welcome to all who have joined us so far. Hopefully we'll have some other people join us as we go along. This is an important issue, as you all know. It's an issue that we've been involved in for a really, really long time. I did some research this morning and found my very first letter back in the days when we were still ACSM, January the 17th, 2011, to then the chairman of the FCC expressing our concerns about what was then Light Squared. And so we've been going ever since then, and it seems as though there have been a lot of ups and downs, it seems to me, as we've gone. There have been times when we thought, okay, this is not going to be a problem, and then it comes back. And so a lot of fluctuation in our emotions, I guess you might say, as we've dealt with this issue that undoubtedly will be harmful to people like us, not just us, but people like us who use GPS for our livelihood. And I think it's safe to say that a vast majority of people among our members are not necessarily dependent on, but certainly use GPS all the time for gathering data, as our listeners know. So it's important for us to be part of this delegation or this group of people who continue to address this whole Legato now. And to that point, JB's here today to talk about something called the Retain Act. It's Senate Bill 2166. He's going to tell you about that, and then a companion bill coming up, and how we can be supportive in the efforts to get that act passed. And JB will tell you more particulars about it. It was very interesting to me the day we were on the Hill just to see how many other people out there are impacted. And you know that, but you don't think about it till you begin to see lists like this one, or you start to talk to people about how whatever it is they're doing is going to be impacted. So with that, we're hopeful that our voices will be heard, and at least in our estimation, logic will prevail, and we will not have to suffer harm. So with that, JB, I think I'm going to let you go ahead and get going and share with the folks, and then you can talk about how people may want to, if they want to ask questions or they want to type something in.
Sounds good, Kurt. Well, good day, everyone. I'm John J.B. Bird. I'm the registered federal lobbyist for the National Society of Professional Surveyors, Nsps. We appreciate you joining us today. As Kurt has kind of teed this up, we wanted to make sure that we recognize that this message, that this opportunity, and the reason why we were hoping that you could tune in today, and for those of you who could not watch live, but this will be recorded, this is an advocacy alert. We're actually asking for specific action for the rest of July, and we'll get into the basics of the Retain Act, but we wanted to tee up based on what Kurt just mentioned, the leadership that NSPS has provided on this issue. And we'll kind of walk you through, but this slide here obviously showcases Kurt, but it's a list of, in this case, it's just over 80 organizations roughly a month ago that decided to endorse and support the Retain Act. And what S2166 is the recognizing and ensuring taxpayer access to infrastructure necessary, retain, for GPS and Satellite Communications Act, or what we call now is the Retain GPS and SatCom Act. And what Kurt is pointing out, it's kind of in short, small print here, but number 62 on the list in alphabetical order, you'll find that the National Society of Professional Surveyors is on the top area where Kurt is pointing at. And we'll come back to the Oklahoma connection, but at number 67 is OSLS, the Oklahoma Society of Land Surveyors. So if we have Burke or Sean on the message today, on the recording today, we want to thank everyone in Oklahoma for contacting their respective senior senator, Senator Jim Inhofe, who's the leader on the bill. But to kind of put this in perspective, how do we get to this point today? This is a picture, many of you will remember that the gentleman on the left addressed the NSPS fall business meeting last year virtually when NSPS President Mark Sargent of New Hampshire introduced Dan Hillenbrand, who is the key point of contact in Senator Jim Inhofe's office from Oklahoma. And Dan runs point on the bill. He is the lead policy advisor for everything GPS for Senator Inhofe and has been really corralling a lot of the stakeholders that either depend on or utilize GPS technology one way or another. So this picture, just like the previous one, is of Kurt visiting Capitol Hill and lending the NSPS, and in this case, the OSLS perspective to why the surveying profession cares about this issue and why we've teamed up in a massive coalition of other stakeholders to support the Retain Act. So again, we have engaged Senator Inhofe. We've engaged the highest level of staff and Senate leadership on the GPS issue. And what that means is that when someone like Senator Inhofe takes the lead and introduces a bill, it's a big deal. Last Congress, when Dan Hillenbrand brought us up to speed on Senator Inhofe's intent to eventually introduce the Retain Act, at that time, the goal was to introduce it as a standalone bill and then potentially add it on to a massive bill called the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. And so Senator Inhofe at the time was the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And because of the change in after the election, a change in power, he is still on the committee, but he is now the ranking member, the lead Republican on the committee, but in the minority. And so when Kurt goes to Capitol Hill, has an opportunity to shake Senator Inhofe's hand and represent the profession, it's a big deal. And Senator Inhofe is open to hearing the perspective that Kurt represents. So when I go and visit Capitol Hill or do that digitally a lot these days, it's one thing for me to do it, but it's way better to have an actual practitioner interact with a U.S. senator and a leader in the Senate on this specific bill. And so we were very happy then and you'll see Kurt is on the far left of the picture here. Senator Inhofe is speaking from the podium. You'll recognize in the middle of the picture John Pelletiello, who's the government affairs consultant for NSPS. We were invited by Senator Inhofe's staff to take part in a news conference on June 23rd, which was the day after the bill was introduced in the Senate. And the senator and his staff chose a beautiful day on Capitol Hill. This area in the Capitol complex, of course outside because of COVID, is called the Senate Swamp. And this is the most high-profile location you can find on Capitol Hill to do a news conference. And so Senator Inhofe, he told us after the event was concluded that this was his first outdoor news conference since COVID. And quite frankly, the first really opportunity to do a news conference overall on the Capitol grounds since COVID. So it's also a sign that things are slowly getting back to normal on Capitol Hill. But again, NSPS is recognized as a leader on this issue, and the senator specifically had us get engaged with other key stakeholders. But of the list of around 82 at the time organizations, you'll see you can count fewer than 10 people up there with the senator. And so that's what kind of audience Senator Inhofe chose to have at his back, if you will, with the Capitol in the backdrop. So again, I help represent NSPS. It's an honor and privilege to represent the profession in Capitol Hill in front of federal agencies. This is my contact information at any point after today's session. If there are any follow-up questions or specifics, please do not hesitate to reach me. I'm Vice President of Miller Wenthold Capital Strategies in Fairfax, Virginia, and we've had the honor and privilege of representing NSPS for the better part of a decade now. So what's the opportunity and what has NSPS been up to? Kurt, let me have you jump back in here and talk about, was it 2011 with Light Squared?
Oh, there I am. Yeah, 2011 was our first foray, if you will, into Light Squared. Honestly, I'm not sure how the message came to us, probably through, maybe through Lawrence, or it could have been John, I'm not really sure. But we were certainly made aware of it and asked to participate in an effort to deal with it. And then I remember a lot of other incidences where this came to fore. I don't think it was, well, it might have been later that year during the ESRI conference out in San Diego. There was a big presentation there about it, and a lot of people, of course, were becoming concerned. So it's been an ongoing saga ever since then. And like I said before, sort of a roller coaster ride as it's gone forward. But the one thing that has remained is that we have to continue to be diligent and keep our eyes and ears open to what's going on, because if not, as you well know, things can happen and you don't know about it until it's too late. So it's really important for us and important for all the folks that are with us today to also get involved and go directly to those legislators and let them know what's going on, and anything that we can provide. Perhaps we can put something together, John, JB, even beyond this if we need to, maybe a draft for a letter or whatever our audience may need across the country to make that contact.
That's a great idea, Kurt. And I think we've developed something of that nature. And I think we're going to work with you and Trish to circulate a one-pager and some talking points specifically on what the ask is and what the action item that we're asking, the profession to activate on now. So that puts it in perspective, Kurt, that you basically have been aware of this issue for almost literally 10 years now, since we're now into 2021, and you received that email in 2011. So what's happened since? And I think one of those organizations, one of those coalitions that NSPS chose to join and was invited to join was the GPS Innovation Alliance, or an earlier version of what we call GIPSIA. We got re-engaged by GIPSIA, I believe, 2 years ago, Kurt. And then you brought on their executive director, David Grossman, to do a podcast 1 week. And that was a very helpful kind of backgrounder as well. And NSPS and GIPSIA, NSPS is an affiliate member. So if you go to the GIPSIA website, you can see exactly some of the other partnering organizations. But it's a very active group. We do conference calls twice a month, and it's one of the better run coalitions, quite frankly, inside the Beltway. And on this issue, it's recognized as really the leader, if you will, on policy as it's connected to GPS overall, but certainly keeping on top of the Legato interference issue. The top one that's listed here, ICALO, I kind of call it ICALO, Industry Coalition Against the Legato Order. And we always have to remind our folks in the industry coalition, whenever we have the opportunity to do a sign-on and put the NSPS letter on one of their letters, we always have to remind them to make sure that we also balance it out by listing the surveying profession. It's not just industries, but it's also professions, such as the surveying profession. And so we make sure that those letters go out in a balanced manner to recognize the professionalism and how GPS gets connected specifically with the surveying profession itself. And then the last bullet there, Keep GPS Working Coalition. That's probably the more recent one, or the newest coalition on the block, so to speak, taking on this issue. And we've kept them up to speed, and they know full well what the surveying profession brings to this discussion. And as I mentioned here at the very bottom of the slide, countless number of coalitions letter, Kurt. I know that we've brought before your attention, and certainly Pat Smith of Texas, who's the chair of the Government Affairs Committee. The two of you have had basically seen every single version of a coalition letter that we've run by you to get NSPS approval to be added to those letters. So over the last several years, definitely in the double digits, maybe up to 20, if my math is correct, Kurt. We've been very active in making sure the surveying profession has been listed as frequently as possible on top of this issue with all of our other stakeholder friends out there in the GPS community. So one last coalition that we definitely wanted to single out, the NSPS leadership, is the Coalition of Geospatial Organizations, COGO. And it's comprised of about 13, maybe now 15 organizations, Kurt. And the only way that COGO will agree to something to move forward with a policy position is that every single organization in COGO agrees to it by unanimous consent. All it takes is one organization to nix something, and COGO cannot take a formal position. And over, gosh, the better part of now 10 to 12 years since COGO's been in existence, COGO it's somewhat been rare to find an issue where COGO can agree to put its name on top of at the federal level. And so I'm happy to report that last year during COVID, former NSPS President John Warren of Washington State chaired COGO at the time and represented NSPS as part of COGO. And he was able to bring all these factors and all these organizations that comprise COGO to agree to make sure that the COGO voice could be fully leveraged. And when we say the COGO voice, we were able to take the NSPS perspective and rally as many other organizations in COGO to back a letter in support of Senator Inhofe's legislation. And that carried through to now the introduction of S2166. So I just wanted to let you know again that the great leadership of John Warren serving as the chair of COGO representing NSPS did also bring in a lot of our colleagues from other surveying and mapping and geospatial organizations on the same page on this kind of federal issue, which is no small feat. So what does the Retain Act do? And we're going to talk about what is the actual action we're asking everyone to activate on. Well, the background is this. In April 2020, the FCC approved what's known as the Legato order. It's an application by Legato to go ahead and move forward and, in our case, in our view, unfortunately, interfere with all the bandwidth and so forth. Quite frankly, I'm not the practitioner. I don't know all the technical side of things. We do know that this is what happened and why the FCC chose to green light the Legato order. And that is, it's our understanding over the last year and a half of going through this issue, the FCC engineers, the technical experts, really come from a telecom background. And everyone else on the GPS issue that is opposing what Legato is trying to do comes from a different perspective on engineering and this bandwidth issue. And so there's a clear conflict between what the engineers from the FCC think is either interference or an acceptable level of interference versus everyone else in the GPS community that's not specifically telecom oriented. And so there's a split there. The good news is that when Senator Inhofe added a provision to the defense bill last year, there is a provision that's going to take a look specifically at the science behind the actual engineering. And there's going to be an impartial group of technical experts from telecom and non-telecom to figure out exactly one way or another, will there be interference? And if there is interference, what's an acceptable level of interference? when it comes to interfering specifically with GPS. Now, to tackle this threat, as I mentioned earlier, last month, Senator Jim Inhofe was the lead sponsor of the S-2166 bill, the Retain Act. The good news is it's a bipartisan bill. Senator Tammy Duckworth is a Democrat from Illinois, and what's significant is that she is one of the co-chairs of the Senate GPS caucus. And so it's one thing to have a bipartisan bill, but it's another thing to have another champion of GPS technology itself and the different benefits to society than having Senator Duckworth on board the bill as well as a key lead co-sponsor. Also, Senator Rounds, a Republican from South Dakota, like Senator Inhofe, Senator Rounds is also a general aviation pilot and knows full well the importance of GPS when it comes to aviation safety and navigation. And the last name listed in this second item here is Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, a Democrat. What's significant about Senator Reed is this. When we mentioned that Senator Inhofe is the ranking member, the lead Republican, but in the minority of the Senate Armed Services Committee, well, Senator Reed is the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee. So here you have both the chair and the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee agreeing to co-sponsor the same bill. That's a significant issue because now, theoretically, the Retain Act, now that it's been introduced, potentially could be added this year to the updated version of the defense bill for fiscal year 2022. So this is a significant presence of co-sponsors, and specifically what we're getting to is out of the 100 senators, 4 are listed here. And so if you are calling in, if you're participating from Oklahoma, Illinois, South Dakota, and Rhode Island, well, what we're asking of you to do is now halfway complete. We'd like you to reach out to the other senator in those 4 respective states and ask them to co-sponsor the bill. If you are calling in or participating today and you do not see your specific state referenced, well, you need to go after both of your U.S. senators from your respective states that are not listed here as a current co-sponsor. So what the bill does specifically, and I'm going to get into this here, I'm just trying to transition back. So the bipartisan legislation requires Legato to cover the cost for correcting any interference their operations create for GPS users, and not just the public sector, but in the private sector of practice. That could be a very, very costly situation for Legato. Trying to bring up the next slide here. Here we go. So what's important, and we do have these in talking points that we're preparing for you and we'll be disseminating to you in a couple different ways. But here's a great thing to point out. After the FCC approved the Legato order, in 2020 testimony before the Senate Commerce Committee, the U.S. Department of Transportation was invited to testify before the hearing in the Commerce Committee. The important thing is the Commerce Committee has jurisdiction over just about everything connected to the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. And when, at that time, Chairman Roger Wicker asked all the witnesses on the panel testifying that day before the committee, he asked me, give me one real-world example of what does GPS interference actually mean? What are the implications? What's harmful about GPS interference? So what's noteworthy is that the witness from the USDOT testified specifically and used 2 different examples, but we combined them here in this talking point, that both high precision surveying and surveying equipment are indeed real-world examples of expected GPS interference by Legato. And so why that's significant is that up until that point, whether through education on Capitol Hill or lobbying by Legato, the chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee was not aware of a real-world implication until USDOT informed the chairman of a real-world consequence, an example, and literally put in front of everyone the surveying profession and the equipment connected as a real-world example. So this is cutting edge for us to really activate on. The good news is that even though we showed you the slide that Nsps and OSLS were listed as 2 of 82 organizations, since that news conference and on the Capitol grounds in the Senate swamp that Kurt Sumner and John Pelletiello participated, since then, the senator is pleased to announce that now over 100 different organizations have actually endorsed S2166. And so what we get out of that is that even though we're one of over 100 organizations, our profession in the specific surveying equipment is literally the testimony as to why the bill is necessary, and as a negative consequence, what's really at stake for the profession. So our action alert, as you can see here at the very bottom bullet point, is to contact, again, if you're from a state where you didn't see one of your 2 U.S. senators listed there, you need to reach out to both of your U.S. senators and ask them, will you co-sponsor S2166? So that is the ask. We'll move on to the next slide and specifically how to go about doing that. Let me make sure I can actually get there. Can I get there? There we go. So I hope everyone can see my screen, but I'm holding up the Nsps Congressional Handbook. I'm sure some of you already have a copy of this. I know that we have some extras at headquarters, but if you do not have quick access to find out, in case you do not know who your 2 U.S. senators are, this handbook is a very helpful good starting place. Otherwise, we have a link here to go to the U.S. Senate website and identify in your respective state your 2 U.S. senators. You can do a couple different things. When we send out a copy of the talking points, the bullet points, you can simply call up that specific Senate office and run through the talking points, exactly what we just covered in the 2 previous slides. And you got to make sure that you specifically ask, will the senator co-sponsor S2166? Another thing you can do is that these talking points, you can then convert as template and place on your own letterhead, your in office letterhead, PDF that letterhead, tailor it, any specific examples of how you use GPS. It could be anything from infrastructure to flood insurance, risk map, gosh knows, anything else that you use GPS that helps a federal, state, local, or if it's a business-to-business client. Showcase exactly how you use GPS. Provide them a real-world example of what you do day in and day out where you're using an exercise in GPS technology. So you want to tailor that message, use our boilerplate language, tailor a personal message from your respective state, put it on your office letterhead, PDF it, and I would encourage you at that point to email it to your respective U.S. senators. For those of you who already have connections to a U.S. Senate office, you've done the Nsps Day on the Hill, you have a business card, you have an email address to a Senate staffer, I would take that PDF version of your letterhead document and email it to that staffer. In the body of the email, I would still use the bullet points to explain exactly what the letter is going after, but make sure that you finish up every single call or every single email with the PDF document, but making sure here at bullet point number 2, will you co-sponsor S2166 if you speak directly with the U.S. Senator? If you speak with a staffer, will Senator so-and-so co-sponsor S2166? We are not looking for support. We are looking for action. So the action item is, will Senator so-and-so co-sponsor S2166? When you receive any kind of confirmation that a senator has chosen to co-sponsor the bill, please send me that information as soon as you can get it to me. Simply CC me on my email or on the message. Again, I've already listed my contact information. We'll come back to that. I have it listed here by email. So any commitment that you are successful in securing from your U.S. senators, please let me know as soon as possible. And we can get back to Senator Inhofe specifically and his staff, Dan Hillebrand, and we can alert of a lot of the stakeholders and other coalition partners that Nsps went to bat for the bill, that Nsps members took it upon themselves to activate, and Nsps members were directly responsible for asking and bringing on a U.S. Senator to co-sponsor S2166. So with that, that's the quick summary of what we asked everyone to connect with us today on. So Kurt, at this point, I guess we should probably back up and take some questions. And if we need to clarify anything, this would be a good time to do so. So Kurt, do you have access to the questions, or do I guess?
I think you should have access to them.
Okay, let me see what I can bring up here. So I guess at this point, if anyone has any questions, there should be a either raise your hand or type in a question location here, and we'd be happy to read off those questions. And if there are any questions or suggestions, or if you just need something clarified, please let me know. And Kurt and I can. There should be I think a hand that you can raise and ask a question or type in, I believe, Kurt.
Yes, there is. There's a little box. Well, I see it on the side. Hang on here for a second. I'm not seeing any just yet.
One thing I would definitely bring up, Kurt, is that for those of you that are connected now live, or for those of you who get to watch this later, there are two things that could happen. Number one, when it comes to calling or when it comes to emailing or writing a letter, number one, if you are specifically in leadership of an affiliate or a state society, potentially what you could do is to have your respective state affiliate or state society place one. And so just like I know that Oklahoma has gone to bat and activated specifically with Senator Inhofe and gotten his attention, we would encourage every other state society and affiliate to do a message on your respective letterhead and then send that into the Senate offices. If you are just maybe not fully engaged with your state society, you're just getting started and you just simply want to do something from your own office letterhead, that is also an option. So we want to, the goal here is volume. We have a quality message. How can we amplify the surveying profession's voice? And the goal is to get as many of you as possible in as many ways to make that connection. If you want to do the hat trick and do it all, call the office, email the staff separately, and do your own letter and then follow up as an email letter. All the above is happy. If you just want to do one of those, that's great. That's outreach. That's activating. And we would very much encourage any or all of the above, if you will. If you do send in a letter from a state affiliate or society, what I'd also recommend you do on that, please CC me on it. It could be a CC or a BCC. Either way, it'd be great to actually get a copy of any letter that goes into Capitol Hill to a U.S. Senate office. All right, Kurt, are you seeing any questions at this point?
I'm not.
Okay, so I think as we kind of close this down, Kurt, a couple of things. Number
I'm trying
one,
to get in touch with you. I'm sorry, I put a question on and I've been raising my hand, and I guess I'm not getting through to you because you
I can
obviously
hear
don't see
you.
it. Oh,
Oh, hold on a second.
I can hear
I'm
you
seeing,
now.
I'm actually seeing some now, Jim.
okay.
Um, since we have you on there, Jim, I'll give you Jim's question first, and then we have several others. So he just says, when can we expect the talking points?
Hey, Jim, good afternoon. So yes, we have the talking points ready. We will be submitting those to Kurt and Trish right after we finish today on this webinar. And then I think we're just going to PDF them, and whether it's maybe Kurt and Trish, you could follow up directly with the attendees today, but certainly I think news and views. So I think everyone's going to get a copy of two things, Jim. Number one is the copy of this recording, and then number two is the copy of the bullet points.
Ed O'Brien asked about, he may have gotten this after the fact, he asked about the companion bill number or the companion bill name.
That's a great question, Ed, because here's what we're doing. We have a Senate bill. We have a Senate bill number. We do not yet have a House bill number, but we think very shortly we will have a House bill. So what we're planning to do in July is simply pursue your two U.S. senators. And thanks to Ed's hard work over the years, Ed, you fall into that camp where you only need to reach out to one U.S. senator because you've been so active with Senator Reid that this was a very easy decision for him. You could take full credit for that, Ed, because how many times you visited with the senator and met with him face to face and discussed things connected to the surveying profession policy-wise. So the short answer is we want to take the entire month of July and specifically focus on U.S. senators. When we get a House bill, we will get a House bill number, and our goal is in August to do the exact same thing, but purely for the House side. So think of it as July senators, August House.
Stephen Hooks asked a really interesting question. He says, how will GNSS surveyors know that Legato is interfering? That's a technical question that we may not have the answer to. Perhaps your equipment doesn't work anymore. I don't really know how that manifests itself.
Hey, Kurt, can you repeat the question one more time?
How will GNSS surveyors know that Legato is interfering with their reception?
So, well, no, I mean, I'm not the technical expert. I will say this, what Chairman Wicker last year asked of the DOT witness and several of the other agencies, federal agencies that were at that hearing was that exact question. It didn't mention GNSS, but it was basically, well, what's interference and what's an acceptable level of interference? Will anyone actually care? Will it actually matter to anyone? Give me a real world example. And DOT has said yes. Precision survey, high precision surveying and surveying equipment will be impacted negatively, will be harmed. So to the extent that anyone would then connect the dots with GNSS, that's beyond me, Kurt. But we just know that US DOT has specifically looked at the engineering analysis, and that's their conclusion they came up with. The interesting thing right now is Legato is not ready for prime time. So they still need to actually build out their network and build out their towers, their telecom towers. So they're still, it's our understanding, Kurt, they're still at least a year away from doing that. But based on what they've applied to do, that's the engineering analysis that DOT has looked at and said, oh, no doubt about it, there's going to be interference.
Stephen also asked us to post a link to the letter template, and we're going to do that. So we'll be good there. Joanne Williamson says, I know there's more information produced throughout the years on the effects of Legato, PowerPoint, or Flyer. Can you send those out? We can certainly send whatever we have, that's for sure.
And I think maybe we combine the last two items there, Kurt, because I think the talking points and everything that NSPS has done, I believe, is already located on the NSPS website under the Government Affairs Advocacy section. I think we've created specific bar and button for Legato and GPS. So a lot of that information should already be available on the NSPS website. And then I think we worked it out with Trish, Kurt, right, that we were going to put the talking points and the recording of today's session also on that same tab.
All right. Tim Birch, by the way, submitted most GNSS equipment and software will notify the user the system is unable to collect redundant positions and therefore are being interfered with. So that goes back to the question that Stephen had asked originally.
Thank you, Tim.
That's all the ones I see as of now.
Very good. Kurt, is there anything else you wanted to cover? I know we came up with, yeah. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you've covered it pretty well. So
let's just do this then as we finalize things. Here's my contact information. I really appreciate y'all taking the time of the day to hear us out and to move forward with the action alert. And we'll get that information out to everyone. Here's my contact information. So again, any kind of letter, PDF, any kind of success story from getting a U.S. Senator to commit, taking that action to commit to co-sponsoring, please let us know. Please keep us connected. And then I think, Kurt, do we want to share the save the date for the Senate one just to get it on people's radars?
Sure.
I believe we are looking to go back to Ed O'Brien's question about, again, the focus on a House bill, a companion bill in the House. We're working on the assumption we'll have a House bill number before August. So our goal is to do exact similar version of this training session, but specifically focus on the House bill, assuming we have a House bill number by then. So we've looked at the calendar and it looks like Tuesday, August the 3rd at 2 p.m. Eastern is kind of a save the date for now. And I think we might update a future news and views to try to get the word out. But since everyone's on the line now, assuming we have a House bill number by the end of July, then we're going to completely turn our focus from the Senate over to the House. And that's why we'd like to do another one of these prep sessions to kind of let folks know, number one, how successful we've been so far on the Senate outreach. Number two, transition to outreach to the House offices.
Excellent. Well, thanks, JB, and thanks everybody who has participated. We'll stay in touch with you. You stay in touch with us as things go along. If you have the opportunity to speak with your legislators, please let JB know. And I'm sure we're going to be having more of these kind of get-togethers as time goes along so we can keep everybody up to speed on where things stand.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Kurt and Trish, for hosting. Again, appreciate everyone participating today. And for those of you who are going to be able to watch this and recording-wise, we look forward to working with you on this. This is very important, and we can't wait to see you all activated and mobilized yet again, but in a different format this way. And really excited about this opportunity. Thank you all very much for your attention today.
Thanks, everyone. We appreciate it.